Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's your boy Devon Terrell, and welcome to another Help Me Devon review. And today, in this Help Me Devon review, we'll be looking at the Mbox Studio from Avid, which is something that I'm really excited about because obviously this is coming from the Mbox line that we've seen before in their arsenal. Now, Avid was so gracious enough to actually send me a unit to look at and check out for myself. Shout out to my guy, Gaurav. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at this piece. I know you have a lot of questions as far as why should you have it, or basically you just wanna get an idea of what this sounds like and maybe even who this is actually for. So today in this video, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover three things. We're gonna look at the build quality, of course, the audio quality, and third, who this is for, what it applies to, and is this for you? Or better yet, does this fit in your studio? Okay, so let's get right to it. First thing first, let's look at the build quality of this piece. So first off, it reminds me of a DJ controller with its clean and sleek rotary knobs that feel really nice to the touch. It's pretty tight and sleek on the outside and has a ton of in and outs. When I turn the rotary knobs, I get clicks, which I like. Okay, so I don't have much complaints when it comes to the build quality of the piece. It feels tight. There's a nice smooth finish as far as a lot of the rotary knobs and stuff like that is concerned. The one thing that is a drawback, or just kind of gave me some reservations, being that I remember the old Mbox, is the size. And I definitely understand where people would look at the size of this unit and think to themselves or be a little bit reserved as opposed to remembering the old Mbox. But what makes so much sense about the box in that regard being that size is the fact that it has so many ins and outs and connections. So I can kind of understand where that may be coming from. Now, to continue on with the build quality, let's take a look at the buttons and knobs and connections, as well as understanding what the interface actually does and what each button actually does. Okay, so in the front, you have two combo jacks for XLR, TRS, or TS cables. On the right-hand side, you have two headphone outs, which are great for independently controlling your headphones. In the middle, you have this high Z out to amp, which is great because now you can reamp guitars, bass instruments, or whatever your instruments are. Now, that would usually cost you a lot of money for a reamp box, but now you have it right inside the piece. On the very back of the piece, you have a ton of ins and outs. On the front of the piece, you had combo jacks 1 and 2, but on the back, you have combo jacks 3 and 4, which are obviously for XLR, TRS, and TS cables. So you have total 4 mic preamps, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. You also have a bunch of other inputs as well that are line level. So you have line inputs 5, 6, 7, and 8. Notice that the effects send section is also a part of output 7 and 8. This is great because now it allows you to bring in some of your hardware compressors, EQs, or whatever hardware piece you have to run right into the signal path of the actual audio interface. But these outputs that I'm pointing to also work as output 7 and 8. So you're working with a lot of ins and outs on the actual unit. On the other side of the unit, you also have control, or you can input a foot switch, which will allow you to manipulate the talkback, as well as being able to do some cool things with your expression pedals. On the other side, you have your MIDI in and MIDI out, which is obvious to help you control any of your MIDI instruments that you want to use. And here you have a SPDIF in and SPDIF out. And then on the other side of it, you have an optical solution for ADAT and SPDIF as well. Now on this side, you have your monitor section, which you see labeled main and alt. Basically, you're allowed to set up 2 independent sets of speakers. Now, I gotta show love to my guy Wavy Wayne for making me realize that if you do have a sub, that is slightly a drawback with the monitoring system because you're not gonna be able to punch your sub in and out. Also, something to note and keep in mind, this section that I'm pointing to with the high Z outs, it's also connected to the high Z out on the front. So when you're using it, remember, you're using one or the other. Now, let's look at the front of the piece. I want you to keep this in mind. You have 2 rotary knobs that can be pressed in for selections as well as turned up or down. Simple. On the left-hand side, it deals with inputs, and on the right-hand side, it deals with monitoring or outputs. Now, let's go through the actual physical buttons. When you press the 48 volts button, this will deliver phantom power to any of your mic preamps that you actually choose. To choose what channel gets that 48 volts or phantom power, you go right to the rotary knob and keep clicking. It'll cycle through all of the inputs as you click. Let's take a look at the input button, which allows you to change the input type of your channel. You can change it from mic, line, or instrument. See, as I press the input button, it cycles between mic, line, and instrument. This next button that says Z is actually a variable impedance switch, which is great for changing the characteristics of the signal that is coming into your channel. Very cool to have. Next, you have a negative 10 dB pad, which is great for bringing down that input if needed. Next, we have this link button, which will basically take two channels and bring them together like a stereo pair. Now, it'll take your input channels as a stereo signal. If I click the link button off and go to 3 and then press link, you'll notice that it'll link 3 and 4. Pressing down the rotary knob and cycling to 5 while pressing link will do the same thing. As I showed you before with the rotary knobs, as you press down on it, you can switch between the channels. But also when you land on a channel, by pressing the input, you can also turn it up or down as you are cycling between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Remember, I can also change the input type as well. In the middle of the Mbox Studio, you'll notice these 4 colorful buttons. This is linked to the Mbox Control app, which you can then customize to do specific things depending on your workflow. These are fully customizable for you. Speaking of the Mbox Control app, they have integrated an actual button to pull it up right onto your computer, which I thought was really cool and super convenient to do. Once I press the button, it winds up right in my DAW, just like that. And if I press it again, it'll go away. Now, I thought this was super convenient because a lot of time with the digital mixers, I get super annoyed having to go to my search bar and basically type it in and find it. Or I don't even have to go to my dock anymore. I just simply press this button and it's gone. Simple as that. Next, we have this tune button, which is an internal tuner built into the Mbox Studio. And it works for channel 1 and 2, as well as the internal microphone for acoustic stuff that you want to pick up on. I thought that was really clever to put a built-in tuner into the actual interface. Next, we have this Bluetooth button, which is awesome for Bluetooth input devices. I can literally connect my phone, listen to calls, or I can even just play music through it from my phone or whatever my Bluetooth device is. Now, I thought this was really cool, and I think this is really powerful for podcasters if they are trying to record calls or just get that type of information as a separate input. Now, remember, this knob works exactly the same as the knob on the left. It can be pushed and it can be turned. Basically, the right side can be used for selection as well. So, this deals with output and monitoring. When you hit this link button, it'll connect the control of your main and alternate speakers as one, meaning that instead of switching and having different volumes, it'll basically say if your volume knob is 5 for the main, I'll be 5 for the alternative speakers. Which is great because now when you switch between your alternate or main speakers, you won't get a blast of volume from one as you're switching, or one getting extremely quiet as you're switching. Now, of course, you can unlink them and control the volume of your main or alternate speakers separately. It's totally up to you. You have the functionality there set in the piece. Now up here, we have another Bluetooth button, but this Bluetooth button is in regards to output, meaning I can now connect my AirPods or whatever Bluetooth headphones or speaker to my actual Bluetooth system, which is great because now I can literally reference my mix or whatever my sound source is through my AirPods. No more bouncing my MP3, putting it in my phone to listen to the mix. Now I can listen to it right in the piece. Beside it, you have a mono button, which throws the mix in mono. Below that, we have a talk button, which is a great feature and why I keep saying that this piece really can save you money as far as not having to purchase a monitor controller. That's an awesome thing to have. As you can see, the microphone is right here so you can talk to the artist or whoever you're talking to. Next, you have a dim button, and beside that, you have a mute button, which completely just cuts the signal. Just a note, when you press down on the actual rotary knob on the right, it'll cycle between your main speakers or your alternate speakers. But also, if you had a digital output, it would allow you to switch to those. And if you had a Bluetooth output, it would allow you to switch to that output as well. So, one button allowing you to switch between all of those outputs simply. Now, this is a quick look at the Mbox Control app, which gives you power and flexibility over all your channels. Okay, now let's take a look at the audio quality, which I'm actually really excited to hear about because I know that the Carbon has the same THAT preamps that this piece has. So I want to see what those preamps sound like, as well as the converters. I'm very, very excited because I want to know what these converters sound like and how they measure up. So we're gonna take a listen to how the preamp sound, and we're also gonna take a listen to how that A to D DA conversion sounds, which is very important to me. Now, when it comes to test of preamps and converters, I like to compare them to other pieces of equipment out there because it's so easy for me to play you something and you hear it for what it is. But if I put it next to something, then you can have a better idea of what it's actually standing up to. So for this test, I'm gonna bring in my Prism Sound Titan interface, which cost around $4,000. And then I'm also gonna bring in my Sterling Audio interface that goes for about $150, $100 used. That way we can see where it actually sits in between those two pieces. Okay, so first, let's test out the preamps.
I find it odd that I'm tested, but I'm testing myself. I find it odd that I'm tested, but I'm testing myself. I find it odd that I'm tested, but I'm testing myself. I find it odd that I'm tested, but I'm testing myself. I find it odd that I'm tested, but I'm testing myself. I find it odd that I'm tested, but I'm testing myself. I find it odd that I'm tested, but I'm testing myself. I find it odd that I'm tested, but I'm testing myself. I find it odd that I'm tested, but I'm testing myself. I find it odd that I'm tested, but I'm testing myself. I find it odd that I'm tested, but I'm testing myself. I find it odd that I'm tested, but I'm testing myself.
Now, if you guess A for the Sterling Audio preamps, B for the Mbox, and C for the Prism Sound, you're in fact correct. Okay, so upon listening to the Mbox Studio preamps versus the Sterling Audio preamps, my first perspective is I noticed that the Mbox Studio preamps sound more rounded. I feel like I'm getting more of the frequency spectrum as opposed to the Sterling Audio where I feel like there's not much of that low-end information that I'm getting. I feel like it's very bright and tinny and feels really small. As opposed to the Mbox Studio preamps, I noticed that it feels a little bit more open. It has that brightness, but it's doing a better job of actually reproducing those frequencies and capturing that brightness, as opposed to on the Sterling Audio where it feels a little bit more sizzly. I noticed that these preamps were a little bit calmer in that mid-range section, but that was something that I was looking for when it came to these preamps. When I compared the Mbox Studio to the Prism Sound preamps, I noticed that the Mbox Studio had a brighter sound when it came to their preamps. It feels a little bit more open. But what I noticed with the Prism Sound is that they feel a little bit more rounded as far as giving me more low-end information, which I already know deep down when it comes to that Prism Sound interface. When it comes to recording bass instruments or guitars or anything like that, it's gonna do a really good job of reproducing those frequencies. When it comes to anything that feels a little bit more low-endy, I feel like the Prism Sound interface does a really good job of reproducing those frequencies. Not a slight to the Mbox Studio as far as being able to really reproduce or just give me a really nice round bottom. It gives me some of that. It kind of is that in between, and that's why I like to do a test like this. So you can make your own conclusion as far as hearing something from a $4,000 unit and something that like the Mbox Studio that's going for about $1,000 or less at the time of this recording. So overall, as far as the preamps are concerned, I really like the preamps. They sound open. They seem like they're giving me a nice range as far as the frequencies are concerned. I'm getting some of that low end. I'm getting a nice top end that feels like it's not sizzly or hurting like the cheaper preamps. And to know that I have 4 of those preamps on this piece is great. But you can draw your own conclusions from hearing that test. And also I'll leave a link in the description below to the actual audio file so you can bring it in your DAW and make the decision for yourself. All right, now let's check out these converters.
Why we not together? I know we want the same thing. Tell me, why we not together? I don't wanna be your friend. Tell me, why we not together? Is there somebody else on your mind? Why we not together? We should be together, together. Anybody you pull up, beating them immediately. Put that on my mama, shouty, these ain't seeing me. Pull up in that, oh God, what the fuck that? I know that you gotta stay.
Okay, so if you pick A for the Mbox, B for the Sterling Audio, and C for the digital sum, you are in fact correct. When I compare the Mbox Studio converters compared to the Sterling Audio converters, I immediately noticed a difference with the width and the clarity, and that's what caught my attention immediately, because going from the Sterling Audio and even the digital sum, I noticed that when I ran it through the conversion process of these actual converters, it felt like it opened it up. I felt more clarity, I felt more width, and it felt a lot better to my ear as far as what I was getting. With the Sterling Audio and with the digital sum, they were very similar in the sense of how narrow the stereo field kind of felt. It felt a lot smaller in comparison to the Mbox converters. I like that it opened up the mix a little bit. It gave me just a little bit more space, that it felt like my instruments and stuff like that kind of weren't crowding on top of each other. It felt like I got a little bit more separation and a little bit more of an idea of the actual image. So that's a converter test just to give you an idea of what those converters sounded like going out the D to A A and into the A to D. What did that process sound like? You just heard it, and it's up to you. You can listen in the link in the description below if you want to hear those files as well. So who is this piece for? What would this piece be used for in your studio? And who's gonna buy this? Well, in my opinion, I think that this piece is great for podcasters. I think this piece is great for the serious engineers, people that are not just per se cutting vocals, but people that are probably really serious about mixing, because now you have the option of adding your hardware compressors or anything like that with the device. You can also take it serious when it comes to just reference mixing. If you want to hook up your AirPods and listen to your mix on AirPods, which is what most people are listening to their music on, you can do that. I think this piece can be for a serious traveling mix engineer, a serious recording engineer, someone that wants to just be able to have all the functionalities to do guitars, to record drum kits, for bands. I think that this is really for a serious consumer, not just someone that is basically has a studio and just cuts vocals all day. But I will say this, if you're looking for a piece that has quality preamps and great converters for the price point that it is, then you're in a good space. You probably wouldn't need to expand or buy more preamps and things of that nature if you're just looking for a one-stop shop interface. Because at the same time, this also will eliminate you having to buy a controller, a monitor controller, which would probably cost you another $300. You get that right inside the piece. So if you're also just a serious recording engineer or just someone that just wants to get a bang for your buck, I can totally understand why you would actually get this piece for yourself. Now, when it comes to traveling, I can understand where that can be somewhat of a daunting task. It's not a huge piece, but it's also not small. So I can understand why you probably maybe wouldn't decide to take this as your travel piece. But if you were doing serious work and you wanted to be able to have a high quality piece with you, that you trusted, that you have a bunch of headphone outs and literally can just record any and everything and any issue you run into, I can totally understand why someone would and can travel with this piece in that regard. And I'm not here to sway your opinion. I just wanted to give you my perspective, and then at the same time, I also wanted you to hear the piece. Because to be honest with you, let's be honest. We want to hear what this thing sounds like. We want to measure it up against real world stuff. That's why I put it against my super expensive $4,000 interface, and then against my $100 interface, just to give you an idea of what this piece is worth and where it stands. Overall, when it comes to a piece that's just all in one and fresh and new, I think it has it, because it has everything that I need in my recording studio. From the preamps, bunch of those, to a talkback, to the variable impedance switch, so many different things. The Bluetooth, which I really haven't seen on interfaces. Maybe you have, but I haven't seen that on a bunch of interfaces. I thought that was really cool. I think that this is great if it works for you. So I hope that was helpful. This was my review on the Avid Mbox Studio. I hope that was helpful. Please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. And also, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please hit us in the comments below. Also, follow us at Help Me Devon on Instagram. Also, make sure you follow us in our Discord community with a bunch of aspiring engineers like yourself, trading secrets and getting game, right in the link in the description below. Remember, I'll leave these audio files in the link in the description as well if you want to bring them into your DAW and listen. Also, make sure you listen to the My Audio Nerds podcast every single Wednesday on Apple and Spotify. So I hope that was helpful, and until next time, you guys.